and welcome. You're watching the weekend edition of Into Vietnam, which summarizes the most outstanding macroeconomic and investment news in the week ending March the 23rd. Top stories of the week. The Ho Chi Minh City Securities Company says Vietnam's consumer price index recorded the lowest increase in the past decade. The Ministry of Planning and Investment revised up FDI figure in 2013. Vietnam and Sweden economic and trade tie has developed satisfactorily and will be boosted further at the conclusion of the Vietnam-EU FTA later this year. The comment was made by Mr. Frank Belfrage, the State Secretary for Foreign Affairs of Sweden during his official visit to Vietnam. Let's begin with this week's figure. The Ho Chi Minh City Securities Company's forecast Vietnam's consumer price index this month could inch up 0.08% from February, the lowest rise in the past decade, due to low demand and the close price management by relevant agencies. On an annual basis, March CPI is forecast to rise 4.93%. In its regular meeting late last month, the government also decided to adjust down the annual inflation target to 6% from 7% as estimated early this year. According to the Vietcombank Securities Market Researcher Division, there would be no significant change in inflation this month, which will rise between 0.05% and 0.1%. The HSC says that the low CPI was one of the reasons for the State Bank of Vietnam deciding to cut policy interest rates by 0.5 percentage points on March the 18th, making the decision the first of its kind in 9 months. According to the State Bank of Vietnam, as of March the 13th, 2014, the system credit has decreased by 1.05% compared to the end of 2013. However, credit in early 13 days of March rose 0.13% after falling 2 months earlier. As of March the 13th, the total means of payment in the whole system increased 2.96% compared to the end of 2013. The amount mobilized capital has increased 1.92% after Tết holiday, in which mobilization in Vietnam dong rose 2.23% and in US dollars fell 0.09%, consistent with the anti-dollarization policy by the government. In only 2 months, the central bank has bought large amounts of foreign currency, showing high foreign currency supply and improved confidence in Vietnam dong. The General Department of Vietnam Customs says the country incurred a trade deficit of $550 million in February. In details, the country shipped $21.35 billion worth of goods in January and February this year, making a year-on-year increase of 13.8%. Of note, the foreign direct investment sector earned $13.28 billion from export in January and February, up 18.8% on year and accounting for 62.2% of the country's whole export values. The country's export staples in the first 2 months of this year are mobile phone and accessories, garment and textiles, computers, electronic products and spare parts, crude oil, aquatic products, machinery, tools and spare parts. Meanwhile, Vietnam spent a total of $20.04 billion to import goods and services in January and February period, increasing 12.6% from a year ago. FDI sector posted $11.5 billion worth of import value in the period, up 14.6%, accounting for 57.4% of the country's total import values. The country's key import items in the period are machinery, tool and spare parts, computers, electronics products and spare parts, mobile phone and accessory, petroleum, steels and iron. Coming up next is some major macroeconomic and investment news in the week ending March the 23rd.
$34 million in foreign direct investment or FDI was registered in 2013, a revised report by the Foreign Investment Agency under the Ministry of Planning and Investment noted. Earlier in December, the agency announced that the country had attracted approximately $21.63 million in FDI for the year. However, this figure was calculated as of December the 15th. According to the new reports released last week, up to 1,530 new foreign investor projects was licensed, with a total registered capital of $14.48 billion by the end of 2013, increasing 67% against the previous year's figure. 5 of these projects were large-scale with an investment capital of over $1 billion, or equivalent to 54% of the total FDI pledged in the country. Another positive development was the approval of the expansion of 590 existing projects, thereby adding $7.86 million to their capital and marking a slight increase of 1.5%. During the reviewed period, FDI disbursements also showed a positive trend, with 10% rise over the previous year at $11.5 million. The manufacturing and processing sector attracted the largest share of FDI, reaching $17.14 million, or 77% of the nation's total registered capital. The wholesale and retail and real estate sectors ranked the second and third, attracting $2.04 million and $952 million respectively. Among the 57 countries and territories investing in Vietnam, Japan was the leading source of FDI with over $5.87 billion, which is 24% of the total FDI registered in the country. It was followed by Singapore, $4.76 billion, and the Republic of Korea, $4.46 million.
The fleet of civil aircraft in Vietnam will increase to 230 and 250 by 2030, in accordance with the recent civil aviation strategy approved by the Prime Minister. The plan calls for airlines to substantially increase bilateral and multilateral air transport capacity with traditional markets in Southeast Asia, Northeastern Asia, and China. They will also beef up efforts to promote air transport links to South Asian region, East Europe, and the former Soviet Union. The strategy outlines plans to expeditiously open air routes and increase passenger and cargo transport capacity on air routes to Europe, North America, Latin America, and Africa. It also places great emphasis on the need to encourage investment in developing regional transit aviation ports, as well as inciting foreign airlines to open air routes to these ports. According to the latest wealth report of Ngoại Frank, Vietnam's ultra-high net worth individuals with $30 million or more in total assets will double to nearly 300 in the next 10 years. Vietnam tops the list of countries with the fastest growing ultra-rich population, forecast to increase 166% from 2013 to 2023, followed by Indonesia with 144%. Ngoại Frank said that Vietnam's recent decision to allow foreign investors to hold up to 20% of shares at banks will greatly help develop the banking system, a prerequisite to wealth development. Additionally, the government is successfully shifting the economic model away from agriculture to more modernized technology while containing inflation, which facilitates the consolidation of growth and create opportunities to raise individual citizens' wealth. The United States group ExxonMobil has accelerated the pace of its investment in the $20 billion worth of gas electricity complex in Vietnam. The Ministry of Industry and Trade noted that the group has completed site investigation and selection. ExxonMobil was expected to submit relevant documents and implementation plan to the Vietnam National Oil and Gas Group and the Ministry for approval. The investment plan was initiated several years ago when ExxonMobil discovered offshore gas reserves in central Vietnam. ExxonMobil and PVN have jointly planned to build a 200 hectares gas electricity complex in the central region. Half of the area will be used for building a 1,500 megawatt power plant. In the second phase of the project, the area will be expanded up to 200 hectares for building 4,000 to 5,000 megawatt power plant and gas processing facility. The Asian Development Bank said in its latest Asia Bond Monitor released on March the 20th that Vietnam's bond market expanded the fastest quarterly growth among the emerging East Asia markets with 14.8%. In Vietnam, majority of the issued bonds was the government bonds that supported Vietnam bond market to rank first in emerging East Asia countries with 14.8% quarterly growth to $29 billion, a record high for the country also, in which government bonds grew 15.4% to $28 billion, while corporate bonds reported a slowdown by 6.8% to $700 million, the lowest level in recent 4 years. However, the actual size of the corporate bond market may be greater than this number because some bonds issued through private transaction between businesses and banks. Exports of domestic firms in the first 2 months of this year increased by a slight 4.4% compared to 21.1% recorded by foreign investor firms. According to the latest data from the General Department of Customs, domestic enterprises obtained a total export turnover of $8 billion, while FDI firms netted $13.2 billion in export revenues. FDI firms took the lion's shares in most products that had high export revenue and growth during the period. For example, 99.7% of export turnover of mobile phones and components, which posted total export value of more than $3.4 billion in 2 months, belongs to FDI firms. They also made up 60% of $2.9 billion export turnover of apparel and 75.3% of $1.4 billion turnover of footwear and leather exports during the first 2 months, while these products used to be the main export products of domestic firms. The Vietnam Logistics Business Association and the Vietnam Logistics Institute launched the Vietnam Logistics Index in Ho Chi Minh City on March the 18th. The VLBA said the logistics sector generated $20 to $22 billion a year, representing 20.9% of Vietnam's gross domestic product. The index, based on other countries' experiences, is updated daily, thus providing more information about listed logistics companies for investor and investment funds. On this occasion, a program voting top 25 logistics companies in Vietnam was started. The result is scheduled to be announced in June. According to the VLBA, most of the 1,200 logistics businesses in Vietnam are based in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City and are of small and medium size. Meanwhile, 25 multinational logistics enterprises operating in the country have an 80% market share. And now some foreign trade news will continue the program. Vietnam faced a trade deficit of $279 million in the first half of March, largely attributable to foreign businesses' huge imports. Vietnam customs data show the country's total import-export turnover edged up 4.4% to $11.66 billion in the reviewed period. Of the value figure, export turnover dipped 3.9% to $5.69 billion, while imports jumped 13.7% to $5.96 billion. With an import surplus of $120 million, the foreign business sector made up nearly half of the country's total trade deficit. Vietnam's import and export value totaled $52.94 billion from January the 1st to March the 15th, of which exports accounted for nearly $26.98 billion. Machinery, equipment and tools topped the list of import items, while key export commodities include telephone and spare parts, garment and textiles, and computers, electronic products and components.
Vietnam strives to earn $11 billion from aquatic exports by 2020, including $5.5 billion from the shipment of farmed products. According to the General Statistics Office, in 2013, the aquatic sector pocketed $6.7 billion from exports, a year-on-year increase of 10.1%. The output of aquatic products rose from some 1 million tons in 1990 to nearly 6 million tons at present, including 2.7 million tons of cod products and 3 million tons of farmed products. Vietnam prioritizes growing shrimp in traffic, which are of high economic values. The domestic dairy industry currently imports 70 to 80% of its input materials, creating a strong link between the price of Vietnam dairy products and corresponding global prices. In recent times, local dairy producers have increased prices of products on the back of rising prices in the world market, which is giving rise to concern and the need for an improved alternative strategy for cow breeding. Since the Prime Minister approved a policy on cow breeding in 2001, Vietnam has domestically met only 28% of its annual total demand for dairy input materials. As a result, Vietnam for the first time spent in excess of $1 billion purchasing dairy input from overseas markets last year.
Among a series of events to celebrate the 45th anniversary of Vietnam-Sweden diplomatic tie on March the 18th, the State Secretary for Foreign Affairs of Sweden, Mr. Frank Belfrage, paid his first official visit to Vietnam, helping to boost the country relation in multi fields. Significant achievements were recorded in the bilateral tie between Vietnam and Sweden in past year. Among a series of events to celebrate the 45th anniversary of Vietnam-Sweden diplomatic tie, Mr. Frank Belfrage, the State Secretary for Foreign Affairs of Sweden, paid official visit to Vietnam early this week. He affirmed the chances for both nations to boost trade and economic tie, especially with the prospect of concluding the Vietnam-EU Free Trade Agreement negotiations as soon as this October. The State Secretary for Foreign Affairs of Sweden revealed outstanding outcomes of his working session with Vietnam's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Ha Kim Ngọc. He congratulated Vietnam on being appointed member of the United Nations Human Rights Committee between 2014 and 2016 and regarded this as a chance for Vietnam, Sweden and other nations to continue open exchanges and initiatives in enhancing human rights protection. Both sides appreciated the fact the Vietnam-Sweden relation has switched the focus from development relation in early years to trade, investment, tourism, culture, and people-to-people exchange.
We have also some very important developments in the sense of buying products which are Vietnamese products which are sold on the Swedish market, such as garments, clothing, textile. The well-known Swedish group H&M are buying a lot here in Vietnam. That's very important. But we also see the rapid technological developments in the world making it possible for Sweden and Vietnam to cooperate further.
Bilateral trade between Vietnam and Sweden has grown an average 28% per annum in the past 3 years and reached more than $1 billion in 2013. Their cooperation has covered various fields like healthcare, education, science and technology, legal support, administrative reform, environment, and responding to climate change. The chances for Vietnam and Sweden to expand their cooperation are huge. Currently, some 50 Swedish companies are operating in Vietnam, including big ones like Ericsson, Electrolux, Tetra Pak, IKEA. It is expected that more Swedish businesses will come to Vietnam in the years to come. The Swedish State Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Frank Belfrage, said once the Vietnam-EU Free Trade Agreement negotiation is finalized, there will be a new boost for Vietnam and Sweden trade and investment relation. The European Union is topping the list of Vietnam exporting market, Mr. Frank Belfrage emphasized the position will be strengthened further thanks to FTA conclusion, and will facilitate Vietnam in accessing the 500 million consumer market in Europe. In the meantime, European businesses can introduce technologies and solutions for the potential Vietnamese market with more than 90 million people. He also recommends Vietnam open its market further, create more room for healthy competitions to boost productivity, enterprise development, and economic growth. On the occasion of the Swedish State Secretary for Foreign Affairs' visit to Vietnam, VITV reporter had a talk with him, who highlighted major developments in Vietnam-Sweden relation and new boosts for the trade and economic tie when the Vietnam-EU Free Trade Agreement is finalized later this year. More to follow. Mr. Frank Belfrage, first of all, thank you so much for joining our program today on VITV channel. Can you inform our audience of the major outcomes of your visit to Vietnam this time?
Yes, the reasons are twofold. First is that we have a conference of all the Swedish ambassadors in Asia who are gathered here in Hanoi for their yearly meeting, and we have had a chance to discuss matters of mutual interest. And then secondly, I'm here also to meet my counterparts in the Ministry for Foreign Affairs and others to mark the 45th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Vietnam and Sweden back in 1969, 45 years ago.
We all know that economic and trade tie has been the pillar for Vietnam and Sweden economic relation in the past 45 years. Bilateral trade has reached more than $1 billion in 2013. What are the new directions for the two countries to boost trade in the coming time?
Well, the relations have been evolving in a very satisfactory manner. We have gradually shifted the emphasis from the time when main emphasis was on development cooperation, financial aid, to now a relationship which is much more marked with trade, investment, people to people. We have a very satisfactory development of tourism. There are around 30,000 Swedes which every year visit Vietnam, which is a beautiful country, and the